Danette Millbrook and Jeanette Millbrook were fraternal twins born on April 2, 1974 in Augusta, Georgia. Described as inseparable, the sisters shared a close bond, with Danette often acting as the more assertive protector of the shy and reserved Jeanette. Both stood out for their distinctive Jerry curl hairstyles, pierced ears, and matching scars above their navels from a childhood surgical procedure. Danette was slightly taller at 5 feet 6 inches and 130 pounds, while Jeanette was 5 feet 4 inches and 125 pounds. The twins attended Lucy Laney High School, where they were known as responsible students, with no history of behavioral issues beyond a minor altercation in 1989, when Danette defended Jeanette from a bully at a bus stop. The events of March 18, 1990, began uneventfully. Around midday, the twins accompanied their mother, Louise Sturgis, to Church's Chicken on Laney Walker Boulevard. During this outing, they mentioned to Louise that a man in a white van had followed them for part of their walk, a detail that would later loom large in the investigation. After returning home, the girls set out on foot to complete errands, unaware it would be their final day in the public eye. Before the disappearance, there were several key stops that the twins made. They visited their godfather's residence to borrow $20 for bus fare, as their family had recently moved to a neighborhood farther from their school. He provided the money along with extra cash for snacks, and later recalled nothing unusual about their demeanor. Around mid-afternoon, the sisters stopped at their cousin's house, where they asked her to walk home with them. The cousin's mother refused, citing that it would turn dark soon. Family members later noted the unusual nature of this request, as the twins had never previously sought companionship for routine walks. The girls then visited their older sister, Chantal Sturgis, who had recently given birth. They stayed for approximately 15 minutes and again asked for someone to accompany them home. Chantal, preoccupied with her newborn, declined. This repeated plea for company struck relatives as out of character. At 4:30 p.m., the twins arrived at the Pump End Shop on the corner of 12th Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The clerk, Gloria, who knew the girls, sold them chips, candy, and soda. She later reported that they appeared calm and showed no signs of distress. Notably, Gloria did not witness them leave the store or interact with anyone outside, though she recalled a vehicle parked nearby. This sighting marked the last confirmed moment the twins were seen alive. At the time of their disappearance, Jeanette wore a blue pullover over a white turtleneck, a beige skirt, white stockings, and sneakers. Danette sported a white Mickey Mouse shirt, white jeans, and black shoes. Additionally, they had scars around their navels. These critical details were later muddled in police reports due to clerical errors, which was a recurring issue that hampered the investigation. When the twins failed to return home by nightfall, Louise grew increasingly anxious. After waiting through the evening, she contacted authorities the following morning, March 19th, only to be told that she must wait 24 hours before filing an official missing persons report, a policy later criticized as negligent. By the time police initiated a search, critical early leads had likely gone cold. Within a year, the authorities closed the case, offering the family inconsistent and ultimately false explanations. The Sturgis family was told the twins had either aged out of foster care or had simply turned 17, the legal age at which minors could no longer be classified as missing. Both explanations were demonstrably incorrect. The twins were only 16 at the time, and there was no record of their involvement in foster care. To make matters worse, a juvenile case officer erroneously reported that the girls had been found, which led to their removal from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children database. This error effectively erased their case from national missing persons registries, severely limiting both public awareness and investigative momentum. the investigation was further hampered by a series of egregious errors in the official documentation, many of which persisted for decades. The twins' surname was repeatedly misspelled as Millbrooks in police reports and national databases, and Jeanette's middle name, Latrice, was incorrectly recorded as Latrisa. Such inconsistencies created confusion and made it more difficult for other agencies and the public to connect with the case. There were also discrepancies in the recorded birth dates and the route the girls were believed to have taken home, with early reports incorrectly stating they had traveled down a different street than what witnesses later confirmed. Despite these setbacks, the Millbrook twins' family, particularly their sister Shantaya, never stopped advocating for answers. After more than 2 decades of persistence, their efforts finally paid off in 2013 when Richmond County's newly elected sheriff, Richard Roundtree, publicly acknowledged the mishandling of the case and reopened the investigation. Roundtree stated, "We think a terrible injustice has been done for the last 20 years and pledged to address the mistakes of the past." However, the renewed investigation faced significant challenges. With no crime scene, forensic evidence, or reliable physical clues, detectives were forced to rely almost exclusively on decades-old witness statements and family recollections. Complicating matters further, key figures such as the twins' father, John Millbrook, refused to cooperate with the investigation. He declined to provide a DNA sample and, according to reports, told associates to inform police he was dead if they inquired about him. In 2017, the case took another turn when Ernest Vines, a convicted murderer with ties to the Millbrook family, sent a letter from prison claiming the twins had died during a drug-related altercation at their father's home, and that their bodies had been disposed of at the Mary Brothers brickyard. However, Vance's account was riddled with inconsistencies, including a misidentified timeline regarding a suspect's paralysis, and ultimately yielded no actionable evidence. In an effort to leverage modern forensic techniques, the sheriff's office collected DNA samples from the twins' family members in 2017. These samples were compared against unidentified remains in national databases, raising hopes for a breakthrough. One promising lead involved a Jane Doe found in Aiken County, South Carolina in 1993, whose facial reconstruction bore similarities to Jeanette. However, DNA analysis ultimately ruled out any connection, leaving the family without closure. The absence of the twins' dental records further hampered forensic efforts, as did the inevitable degradation of any physical evidence over the decades. As of 2024, the Sheriff's Office maintains that the case remains active, but meaningful progress continues to be elusive. The $50,000 reward for information has not led to any significant breakthroughs. Aside from the theory that involved Ernest Vaughn and the drug deal gone wrong, some believed that the twins had simply run away. This was the earliest and most persistent theory advanced by law enforcement. This explanation was offered to the family within days of the girls' disappearance and was used to justify the premature closure of the case. Police cited their age, the presence of the $20 between them, and vague rumors of family issues as evidence that they had left voluntarily to start a new life elsewhere. However, the runaway theory has been strongly refuted by the Millbrook family and those who knew the twins best. Both girls were described as homebodies, with no history of running away or behavioral problems. They had a close relationship with their mother and siblings and left behind all personal belongings, including Danette's seizure medication, which she required daily. There was no evidence of planning, and the girls did not take identification or extra clothing. The family also pointed out that rumors about one of the twins being pregnant were unfounded. Neither had a boyfriend, and their older sister was a teen mom who maintained a good relationship with their mother, suggesting that pregnancy would not have been a reason to flee. The runaway theory is further undermined by the fact that neither girl was ever seen or heard from again. There were no phone calls, letters, or sightings, and their social security numbers were never used. The family's insistence that the girls would not have left voluntarily, combined with the lack of any evidence supporting the theory, has led most independent investigators and advocates to dismiss it as implausible. Another theory centers on the possibility that the twins were abducted by a stranger. On the day they disappeared, the twins told their mother that a man in a white van had followed them for several blocks and parked outside the gate of their housing project. This detail has led to speculation that the girls were targeted and possibly abducted while walking home from the convenience store. The last confirmed sighting of the twins was at the Pump and Shop gas station, where they appeared calm and untroubled. However, the presence of a suspicious vehicle and their repeated request for someone to walk with them suggest they may have felt unsafe. The area where they vanished, Bethlehem, was known for its rough reputation, but the twins were familiar with it and had never expressed fear before. The fact that two girls disappeared together in broad daylight without a trace is highly unusual, and some investigators believe this points to an opportunistic abduction by someone in the area, possibly the driver of the white van. Despite the plausibility of this scenario, the lack of witnesses and physical evidence has made it impossible to confirm. The police did not thoroughly investigate the van or canvass the area for additional information in the immediate aftermath, and the lead has never been fully explored. Another theory posits that the twins may have fallen victim to a serial killer operating in the Augusta area at the time. Joseph Patrick Washington, a convicted serial rapist and murderer, was active in the region in the early 1990s and targeted young black women, fitting the demographic profile of the Millbrook twins. Some advocates and family members have suggested that Washington could have been responsible for their disappearance, especially given the lack of evidence pointing to any other suspect. Despite the circumstantial similarities, there is no direct evidence linking Washington to the twins. His known victims were generally slightly older than the twins, and there is no record of him targeting multiple victims at once. Nevertheless, the possibility remains, especially given the pattern of violence against young women in Augusta during that era. On June 16, 1987, a disturbing event unfolded behind an auto repair shop on Collingwood Boulevard, just off Interstate 75 in Toledo, Ohio. It was here, in an alley behind the shop, that the burned remains of a young woman were discovered. The body, wrapped in a pink-colored cloth, had been deliberately set on fire in an attempt to destroy evidence and hinder identification. When investigators arrived on the scene, they found that the remains had been exposed to the elements for several days before their discovery. The victim's clothing included Jordache jeans, and her body was wrapped tightly in the pink cloth, which may have been used to transport or conceal her before the fire was set. The fire had not completely consumed the remains, allowing authorities to recover enough physical evidence to begin their investigation. A detailed examination of the body revealed several striking features. The woman was estimated to be between 16 and 21 years old, with a height ranging from 5 feet 4 inches to 5 feet 7 inches, and a weight of approximately 110 pounds. Her hair was short, cropped, and described as strawberry blonde in color. Her toenails were painted a polished pink, and she had 5 piercings in each ear, each adorned with small round pearl earrings. These personal touches hinted at her possibly being younger and individualistic, but they did not immediately lead to her identification. The Lucas County Coroner's Office determined that the woman had died several days prior to her discovery, but the exact cause of death was not immediately clear due to the condition of the remains and the effects of the fire. The body's location, behind a business near a major interstate, suggested that the perpetrator may have chosen the spot for its relative seclusion and easy access, possibly indicating that the crime had connections beyond the immediate Toledo area. Despite these clues, the investigation quickly hit a wall. The woman was not carrying any identification, and no missing persons reports from the area at the time matched her description. Authorities entered the case into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and a forensic sketch was created and circulated to the public. The hope was that someone, somewhere, would recognize the young woman from her distinctive features or the circumstances of her discovery. The case soon became known as the Toledo Jane Doe mystery. As weeks turned into months and then years, the case grew cold. Detectives rotated in and out of the investigation, each bringing fresh eyes, but ultimately facing the same lack of progress. The physical evidence was re-examined periodically, especially as forensic technology advanced. In 2007, some of the remains were tested again, but DNA technology at the time was not advanced enough to yield a match or even a promising lead. The coroner's report eventually ruled her cause of death as a substance overdose with cocaine found in her system. This finding, while providing some insight, did little to explain the extreme measures taken to conceal her identity and dispose of her body. Why would someone go to the lengths of wrapping her in a blanket, putting a plastic bag over her head, and setting her remains on fire if her death was accidental or self-inflicted? Fast forward to the year 2024, we finally got a major breakthrough in the case. In October of that year, Detective Jason Mussey, who had long been troubled by the unresolved case, sought assistance from the Porch Light Project, a nonprofit dedicated to funding advanced DNA testing and forensic genetic genealogy for cold cases in Ohio. The organization agreed to cover the cost of testing, which traditional law enforcement budgets often cannot accommodate for older cases. This partnership was critical, as previous attempts to identify the remains, including standard DNA analysis and nationwide database searches, had failed due to technological limitations and the degraded condition of the sample. The Porch Light Project connected the Toledo Police Department with Aram Forensic Laboratory. Ultimately, they were able to tie the victim to a family in Michigan, approximately 60 miles north of Toledo. On March 20th, 2025, the Lucas County Coroner's Office officially announced that the remains belonged to Tammy Lowe, an 18-year-old from Taylor, Michigan, who had been reported missing in 1987. Tammy's background included struggles with addiction and economic hardship. According to discussions and reports following her identification, she came from a poor family and was facing significant challenges in her personal life at the time she went missing. These circumstances may have contributed to the lack of urgency or resources devoted to her case when she first disappeared, and may also explain why her disappearance did not immediately garner widespread attention. While the identification of Tammy has provided long-awaited closure for her family and the community, the circumstances of her death remain unresolved. Authorities have not publicly identified any suspects or clarified the exact events leading to her death. The burning of her body suggests an attempt to conceal evidence, but whether her death was the result of foul play or other causes has not been definitively established. Born on October 1, 1973, Megan faced challenges from an early age. In first grade, she was diagnosed with a mild intellectual disability, which led to her placement in special education classes throughout her schooling. Her mother, Cher Romero, described Megan as a child who struggled socially. Classmates often mocked her for her developmental delays, compounding her isolation. Despite these hurdles, Megan developed an outgoing and trusting personality, traits that would later define her interactions and ultimately contribute to her vulnerability. At 18, Megan married and moved to Arkansas with her husband. The marriage, however, quickly turned abusive. While details of the abuse remained sparse, testimonies indicate that Megan's husband subjected her to physical and emotional harm, prompting her to flee and return to her hometown of Lufkin, Texas, in the mid-1990s. Back in Lufkin, Megan insisted on living independently, renting an apartment at the Fox Run Apartments complex. Megan's mother later reflected on her daughter's trusting nature, noting that Megan's loneliness and eagerness for companionship made her an easy target for predatory individuals. This vulnerability was exacerbated by her frequent visits to local nightclubs where she sought social connection, but often encountered risky situations. Such was the case on March 25, 2000. Megan began her night at the Electric Cowboy, a bustling nightclub she frequented. Witnesses recalled her dancing provocatively, a habit that occasionally led to confrontations with staff. On this night, she attracted the attention of an unidentified man who bought her 2 drinks at the bar. Descriptions of this individual varied. Some described him as a white or Hispanic male with dark hair and a cowboy hat, while others noted a white male with blonde hair and a mustache. The discrepancy in accounts would later complicate the investigation. Around midnight, Megan's behavior led security to ask her to leave. Sources conflict on whether she exited alone or with the man who had been buying her drinks. What is clear is that Megan, undeterred, proceeded to another venue, the Sports Shack, located just blocks away. There, Megan danced with acquaintances, including a bouncer who knew her well. She stayed for approximately an hour, during which she socialized casually but showed no signs of distress. Around 1:15 a.m., the bouncer offered her a ride home, which she accepted. They arrived at her apartment complex, Fox Run Apartments, at 1:30 a.m. Megan's neighbor and close friend, referred to as Kathy or Tanya in reports, had waited up to hear about her evening. The 2 women spoke briefly on the balcony outside Megan's apartment. As they chatted, a car abruptly sped into the parking lot, screeching to a halt. Megan glanced down and remarked, "I think that's the guy from the club." She then descended the stairs to meet the driver, while Kathy returned to her apartment. Minutes later, Kathy peered outside and noticed the car still idling in the parking lot. Megan was inside the vehicle, but the driver remained obscured. By 1:45 a.m., the car was empty, and Megan was no longer visible. Growing uneasy, Kathy knocked on Megan's door at 2:20 a.m. Megan answered, cracking the door just enough to reveal a man standing behind her. Kathy later described him as a white male in his early 20s, approximately 5 feet 8 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, with a slim build, blonde hair, a light mustache, and gold-rimmed glasses. When Kathy asked if everything was all right, Megan replied, "He's a friend from the club." The man nodded silently but avoided eye contact. Satisfied by Megan's assurance, Kathy left, unaware this would be the last time she saw her friend alive. At 4:30 a.m., neighbors reported smoke billowing from Megan's apartment. Firefighters arrived within minutes and broke down the door, finding the blaze concentrated on the bed. And it was after extinguishing the flames that they discovered Megan's charred body. Her remains were so severely burned that dental records were required for identification. It was during this window of 2:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. that Megan was subjected to a horrifying assault. She was found bound to her bed by her wrists and ankles with a plastic bag around her head. Additionally, someone had slashed her throat twice. Led by Lieutenant David Young of the Lufkin Police Department, the case quickly became a high-priority homicide investigation due to the extreme violence and calculated attempt to destroy evidence. Investigators noted several critical details. The apartment door and windows showed no signs of tampering, indicating Megan had willingly let her killer inside. She was also wearing a partially burned nightgown, which former boyfriends claimed she only wore during romantic encounters. This led police to theorize she had invited the assailant into her home. Thirdly, the use of Megan's own pantyhose to restrain her suggested the murder was premeditated, but executed with materials readily available at the scene. Forensic pathologists determined the cause of death as a combination of suffocation from the plastic bag and exsanguination Due to the deep throat wounds, the arson was deemed a secondary act to obscure evidence, though its limited spread hindered this effort. Earlier in the evening, witnesses at the Electric Cowboy reported Megan interacting with a Hispanic or white male with dark hair and a cowboy hat, who bought her drinks. This man was saw as a witness but never identified, creating confusion about whether he and the blonde suspect described by Kathy were the same person. Investigators pursued several lines of inquiry, focusing first on men who had been close to Megan. Her ex-husband, Tim Purvis, was a primary suspect due to his history of abuse and the fact that he had been released from prison just a week before Megan's murder. Megan's testimony had previously led to his parole being revoked, and he was known to harbor resentment. Tim claimed to have been watching movies with his mother in Nacogdoches, about 30 miles away on the night of the murder, but he could not provide corroborating evidence for his whereabouts. He also failed a polygraph test. Despite these red flags, there was no physical evidence tying him to the scene, and he was eventually cleared as a suspect. Tim died in a car accident in 2003, effectively ending any further investigation into his possible involvement. Other former partners and acquaintances of Megan were also questioned. Each provided verifiable alibis, and none matched the description of the blonde man seen in Megan's apartment that night. Investigators even explored the possibility that a serial killer might be responsible, considering figures like Glenn Rogers, who was active in the 1990s and known for slashing his victims' throats and setting fires. However, no evidence was ever found to connect Rogers or any other serial killer to Megan's case. The investigation faced significant obstacles due to the state of the evidence. The fire had destroyed much of the potential DNA, fingerprints, and hair samples that might have been present on the mattress or Megan's body. Only the plastic bag and some remnants of the pantyhose survived, but forensic technology at the time was unable to yield any usable leads from these items. The significance of the nightgown also became a point of debate. While police believed it was evidence that Megan knew her killer, her mother argued that the killer could have forced Megan to wear it after the fact in an attempt to stage the scene. This theory was never conclusively proven or disproven. Some, including Megan's mother, accused the police of developing tunnel vision by focusing too heavily on the theory that Megan knew her killer and that the nightgown indicated a consensual encounter gone wrong. This, they argued, may have caused investigators to overlook other motives or suspects, such as individuals connected to Tim Purvis or others who might have harbored a grudge against Megan. Additionally, discrepancies in witness descriptions, particularly the difference between the blonde man seen at the apartment and the dark-haired man at the club, created confusion and led to speculation that more than one person might have been involved in the events of that night. In recent years, there has been renewed hope for solving Megan Curl's murder. In 2025, the Lufkin Police Department announced that surviving evidence from the crime scene had been submitted for advanced DNA analysis, utilizing new forensic technologies unavailable at the time of the original investigation. But for now, the identity of Megan's killer remains unknown.